So we're back. This is episode 3 of Mina's Entrepreneurship Playbook. And we've talked about pitches that get you funded. We've talked about grants, and Mina talked about IRAP and, Alberta Innovates. I should go check Alberta Innovates out though, by the way. But now we're talking about how do you build a kind of focused GTM strategy? Because like we said in the intro earlier on, this is not SV, it's not Silicon Valley, it's Canada, it's Alberta, it's different, So I think, Mina, I'm going to kick on and just ask you is, how do you even start to say, how do you validate your product market fit for Canada's smaller market size? Because, you talked a bit about the thing, how investors look at the market size and talked about the TAM to SAM, but how do you go about validating that product market fit,
Thanks, Dozy. I think that's such a great question. The question we need to answer right now is how do you get to go-to-market strategy when it comes to Canadian marketplace? And you're right, it's not San Francisco. Canada is very, very different. I think you said in episode 1 something that was really profound. You said Canada has a population of around 35 million and it's spread out across a massive geography. So your go-to-market strategy is not going to be the same thing as populous areas. Like I come from, Cairo, which is 35 million in one city. Cairo, right? So your go-to-market strategy is you put a sign up on the door.
Yeah, and everyone just
35 millions walking across that. So totally different strategy, right? How do you actually get to this huge, vast land and just basically say that, hey, I got this product. Would you be interested? And one of the things as a startup advisor who's worked with around 300 startups is if it's a product that appeals to everyone, then it appeals to no one. You got to have a really niche perspective on. I have, for my situation where I'm building a SaaS product called GrantsEase.ai, I had direct line of sight to at least 50 people, ICPs, ideal customer profiles that I need to hit. So as a takeaway from this, and we'll go back to it, is that you have to have at least 50 people that are going to at least consider purchasing this particular product. And from there, your ICP, you're only going to get a 2% conversion rate. Let's just be realistic about things where once you've actually identified, hey, as a go-to-market strategy, I'm going to contact these 50 people, 25 of which are going to say, sure, let's have a coffee. And from those 25 people, only 2% convert. And so when you start to kind of reverse engineer your go-to-market strategy, especially when you're an early stage startup, you start to realize there's just a lot of pragmatics that it's not complicated. It's just a matter of putting yourself out there. And especially as newcomers, we always kind of tend to feel like, oh, I'm insecure about things, or should I go to market strategy? I totally get that perspective. Yes, you should. And the only way to get any kind of validation is to get to market with those 50 ICPs, get your 25 coffees. And from that 25 coffees, you're going to get a 2% conversion rate. That's generally across, again, around 300 startups that I've worked with. It's in and around the 5 to 2% conversion rates on ICP go-to-market strategy. Like to kind of dig into a couple of other things that we chatted about in episode 1 and 2, is that you're in a very unique location in Alberta, particularly in Canada generally, where there is you can de-risk your go-to-market strategy by gaining access to some of the grants that we talked about in episode 1 and 2. So that is something that you should certainly take a look at. Another thing that I would say too is that as you think about your go-to-market strategy and pricing, like it gets a bit complicated, so we'll just kind of keep it broad. But go-to-market strategy, you've got your 50 ICPs, you're going to get your 25 coffees, 2% conversion rates. As you think about pricing, think in USD, don't think in CAD. That's US denomination rather than Canadian denomination. And the reason why you want to think that way is because most people think that way anyways. And so you always kind of consider your go-to-market strategy is going to be a lot more expensive than you actually think. And to be completely honest, again, I'm really happy to do this podcast because this is an opportunity to say that what you're going to do when you go to your market strategy and you go your 50 ICPs, you're going to hear crickets. You're going there's not going to be a lineup for your product. I'm just telling you that straight off. It's not going to be that way. And I've worked with a lot of brilliant entrepreneurs who had incredible products, incredible ideas, but that's the reality of entrepreneurship. That's why it's so hard. And so when you kind of consider your go-to-market strategy, understand that where you want to be is 25 rejections. That's your goal. Not the 25 coffees, but the 25 rejections. So try to kind of go out there understanding that you're going to have a lot of people saying, I'm not interested, this isn't for me. And that's not a bad thing. That's to your point, Dozy, is that market validation? Yeah, it's market validation. Maybe you need to pivot. Maybe the value that you're trying to bring isn't really aligning with the folks that you think are your ideal customer profile.
Yeah.
So you just learn so much by just understanding. Let's get out to those 50 targets and then understand exactly what they're telling me and gain access to that feedback. Another really great hack in terms of your go-to-market strategy, Canada Buys. Canada Buys. It's a website where you can sign up to be basically part of the government procurement process. There are phenomenal opportunities that are out there in Canada that most people don't know about. Yeah, there's also a municipal one as well called Mercs. But in any case, what you want to do is also put your product out there so that government, if you have a product that could potentially be B2G, business to government, that could potentially be right on the government website, whether it's municipal or federal. And it doesn't cost you anything. And it's just a brilliant opportunity to just get your product out there and see whether or not there are buyers. The other thing that I wanted to say, and I'm really happy for you to, give me this opportunity to kind of say that this is what I've learned after, working with 300 startups. There are so many networking opportunities across Calgary, particularly, and across Alberta generally. When you think about your networking opportunity, think about your particular vertical. So if you've got a product in the energy sector, the Global Energy Show, I can tell you firsthand with so many of the founders that I've worked with, they will close deals at those type of shows. But the reason why they actually do work is because there are certain verticals that they work in. When you see an opportunity to go network, but it's general, it's for everyone, and it's not really your particular customer, and you might gain access to some folks, it might be a waste of your time. It's really important to be really discerning about how you spend your time when you're going to these networking events. A lot of them are free, a lot of them are open to the public, but here's my learnings after, again, 3.5 years of Platform Calgary, is that the intention of these events is to get as many numbers as possible in these events, not necessarily to close deals. Yeah. So make sure as you kind of consider which opportunities you're going to go to, it's the right opportunities at the right time, and you're not just going to every single event, because you could be wasting so many hours and just kind of gaining access to people who, reach out to you and say, hey, let's collaborate and so on. A lot of times these things end up nowhere. So you just want to have direct line of sight into ensuring that it's the right vertical. If you're in prop tech, there's prop tech events. If you're in energy, there's energy events. Make sure that you're functioning within that specific area where you want to get into. FinTech is a really good one. FinTech Cadence does really great events. Again, free to the public. These are nonprofit organizations that really try to do outstanding work. Just don't spend a lot of time in your go-to-market strategy going to events that are probably not going to end up getting you anywhere. So
that's good
just
advice.
To recap, ICP 50, 20 calls out there. There's also opportunities for webinars and partnerships. I know I'm giving you a lot, but I think this is also important. The difference between first-time founders and second-time founders, and I've seen this over and over again. The second-time founders understand the power of channel, and they understand the power of partnerships. Those things will expedite your growth tremendously. So what I mean by that is that if you've got a product and pet sales, go to your pet vendor, an umbrella organization that's an association for veterinary medicine or whatever, what have you. If they've got webinars, seminars, you want to get involved in those type of things, they will expedite your growth so rapidly rather than going one-to-one, B2B, B2C. Those are really great opportunities to kind of fish where you live and gain access. So that's a lot of information, but I hope I provided you as much value as possible within that little question.
Yeah, I mean, that's so helpful, especially that point on networking, actually, because I do think about that a lot, in the sense that, like, I hear the advice people give, you have to network every single time. Networking is your second job. But what sometimes people don't say is that while it's your second job, you have to make sure that you do it properly, or else it becomes a It becomes you're out there every single time doing stuff. And yes, opportunities might come, but if you're a startup founder, for example, your time is literally, if you're networking for a different reason, it's part of your job, you're like, that's different. You're trying to get jobs, that's okay. You're a startup founder, business owner, your time is limited. You have to build. So if you're out there networking, then it has to kind of tie back to your overall goals. And I think something else again also is it's related in a way in the sense that it's almost similar to what you said in episode 2 about how you relate to investors. I feel like with just your go-to-market and all that, it's like that is when you go sit down to have coffee with someone, you also build a relationship and they tell you how your product is working. You go back, adjust it. Because it's B2B. If it's a B2B sale, for example, you go back, adjust, come back and say, hey, this is what I have now. Oh, no. But the point is that in the end, you build a relationship, you probably sell, or you get a referral, or you get lessons on pivots. It's that's when you said, I was like, oh, it's almost like the investor piece too. Like they're so similar in a way.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more, Dozy. And one of the things is that the sales cycle in Canada is longer due to the fact that most of the relationships-based sales are based on trust, and trust takes time. And so you see someone at an event, you see them again, you start to network, you go for coffee, you go for another lunch. And so the sales cycles are a little bit long, right? Yeah. I've definitely traveled, very, very fortunate to have traveled a lot and extensively. And you can see how quick business is made in places like Manhattan versus something like Calgary, where it's just going to take that much longer. We're going to have another dinner. We're going to have another lunch and another coffee. And the sales cycle, as you kind of consider your forecasts also, like those are really important things to understand. If you're enterprise level sales, think about 6 months until you actually close that particular deal. Yeah. For good reason. I mean, it's enterprise sales. They're going to trust you with their entire software product. So those are the kind of things that you want to consider as you also forecast. So no, that's a really good point, Dozy, and I'm glad that you brought it up.
Yeah. And then from all you've done so far, what do you think is the most underutilized customer acquisition channel in Canada?
It's finding your sales channel. Like, I'm going to go back to that. You can do it. You can go at it alone. Let me backtrack. So I've worked with, again, around 300 startups. The ones who decide, I'm going to just go at this alone. And I got to say, a lot of the newcomers that I work with consider that as a privilege. They're going to just, do it on their own. They're going to ensure that they're going to hustle. And we'll get to this, but like the whole idea is that you try to provide as much value as possible first before you actually ask to be included in that sales channel. So for example, if I were, again, going back to the pet sales thing, and you've got a really innovative SaaS product, which, connects veterinarians with customers, and you've got this really great two-sided marketplace. When you actually get into the veterinary area, so again, you're a newcomer, you don't really know, like the University of Calgary, they have a veterinary area. Okay, great. Let's start hanging out there. Let's try to figure out who the dean of the veterinary medicine location is. Let's see what events that they have coming up. What kind of information sessions do they have for students? What kind of information sessions for networking events? You kind of just want to hang out in that area. Once you've actually kind of got your ear to the ground and start to understand, oh, there's a missing component here. I notice back home, we do it this way, and I can add this particular value here. Now you've got something that when you go to market and you say that, hey, the next webinar, maybe I can take 5 minutes and just talk about my new product. Then you've got a little bit of an in, right? Because you've established that trust and you've established that opportunities. So sales channels are really, really important in terms of the biggest hack that I've noticed. Again, first-time founders versus second-time founders understand that tremendously well. So they're always looking for opportunities to network. In terms of another key piece, and again, Dozy, you ask such great inquisitive questions that make me think. One of the most underutilized opportunities too is the Calgary Chamber of Commerce, and I know there's an Edmonton Chamber of Commerce as well, but for the price of admission, and it's steep, I think it's like $750 to be a member, it's super worth it. And I'll tell you why. They have events after hours for networking. They have events for you name it, they have events for it. They actually have done an outstanding job bringing as much value as possible to small and medium-sized businesses. And I think most people, including a lot of newcomers that I work with, underutilize the fact that you've got direct line of sight to some of the most lucrative executives in Calgary, really. So you've got opportunities to talk to the president of X, Y, and Z, and they'll be on stage, and it's a networking event, and you've already paid the fee for admission, and you've got several throughout the year. You can just now show your face. There's a bit of a trust factor of like, hey, oh yeah, I've met you before. Like, how else? Where else are you going to get this opportunity? Calgary is so unique in the sense that we've got a smallish population, 1.5, 2 million, where you can actually start to, like, they'll start recognizing you. You're going to start recognizing them and be like, oh yeah, we met before. And it's one of those things this is how business is done. So really happy that you asked me that question. But I would say the Calgary Chamber of Commerce does an outstanding job with connecting folks. It doesn't matter your walk of life, if you're a newcomer or you're not. I'd highly recommend you take a look at that. And then, of course, look at your specific sales channel in that specific niche that you're in.
Yeah. I think the lesson for me there is to say you need to do more with the Calgary Chamber of Commerce and the Calgary Black Chamber of Commerce, because I see them, I see the work they do, and I'm just like, oh, okay, one day I will go for one of their events. I just have never gone for one of their events, but I hear you on that. It's right, because how small Calgary is you need to just kind of go. It's something that I even forgot to say. You made a really great point at the beginning. I think people gloss over that a lot, which is about Canada's unique nature because of our farm and extraction history, we built our population around farmsteads. So you know how farmsteads means that we have clusters, but they are spread out. So now we're small, then we're spread out. So cities that kind of, where they are clustered. How Egypt is. I've lived in Cairo for a bit. How Lagos, Nigeria is like, it's all dense and it's all together. And so you just have all those hubs. And so once you build a business, you literally have a market that you step out of your door and you can knock on tons of doors. Calgary here, for example, everywhere is 20 minutes out. It's just, you're all scattered in places. Then we have suburban living versus downtown living. There's just all that stuff. And I think it's something people don't talk about a lot when we talk about Canada's challenges and with population. It's just that mix of, there has to be, think about the population and then how we are geographically spread and how we're set up as a country. It's a very interesting combination we need to deal with at some point as a country.
It's a really good point. Yeah, I would definitely, one of the challenges is the massive geography that we have. It's also a bit of an advantage as well. In certain ways. So, yeah, networking out in Cochrane, like, they do an outstanding job too in terms of the small business community, Okotoks. Like, what's one of the interesting things, Dozy, now that you kind of mentioned, is that, let's say if you've got a product and you kind of need a go-to-market strategy and you want to test it out with the smaller geographies, like, they have an infrastructure already in Cochrane and Airdrie and all over the place where you can just enter into the small business enterprise and you just network with a whole bunch of people, and it's a safe and really warm environment where you're talking to smaller organizations and smaller businesses, and everyone's amongst themselves. So it's just a really good opportunity to just kind of have those connections really quickly.
Yeah, that's a good one, actually. That's a really good one. Yeah, that's one of the advantages. Just go find one small market, test it out there, get all the feedback and stuff before you start saying, you want to step into the much bigger markets. I think the last question for me for this episode is basically, do you have a framework for testing markets? Testing marketing and sales channels if you're bootstrapping. If you're bootstrapping, you have a small budget. Like, do you have any framework you use for that, or any I think about A, B, C, D?
I'm a firm believer, if you're a very early stage company and you don't have any customers yet, is that you shouldn't be spending money on advertising yet. And when you do end up spending money on advertisement, and this is not just me saying this is also the Wharton School, is the 5% rule. So don't spend more than 5% of revenues into marketing. And there's a whole reasoning behind it. So let's start with, okay, I've got a product, I have to start advertising for it. The idea that you want to have in your head is guerrilla marketing, and that works exceptionally well. And the reason why you want to do the guerrilla marketing is because it really forces you to think creatively and go to that particular niche of customers that you really want to address and have one-on-one conversations with the people. So the customer validation will come from that guerrilla marketing tactic that you're going to start to create. And I'll give you a practical example of this. One of my favorite companies, and I was very fortunate to be mentored by one of the co-founders, is Bessie Box. And so Bessie Box basically is a food delivery app. And so they had to compete with all the rest of the food delivery apps, which is really annoying because there's so many and they were coming out. So when Bessie Box went to market, they would actually take their, they would take a grocery store cart and put Bessie Box as their logos on the side of the actual cart itself. And they'd walk around the grocery store themselves. It's like, why aren't you getting your groceries just delivered to your house? Here's Bessie Box. Here's a 10% off code, 20% off code. And then all of a sudden, because they put themselves out there and it cost them nothing to actually just put something on the cart. And then at the end of the day, they take the sign down off the cart, put their cart back, and then go home. All of a sudden, now they've got a captured market and lots of really great conversations. Like those kind of tactics really work and they go a long way. Now, the biggest barrier to entry here is pride. That's it. Dozy, like if I were to be completely honest with you and everyone who's listening to this, one of the biggest challenges isn't the great idea, isn't the go-to-market strategy, it's pride. It's that, man, I used to make so much money back home. I was an executive. I did all these incredible things. Look at my accomplishments. Look at my CV. I have a PhD. Like I hear that a lot amongst a lot of the newcomers that I work with. And it's absolutely true. And they have MAs and just brilliant people. They work for the governments. But, you know, if you can swallow your pride a little bit and say, this is a new market. I don't know the people here. I don't know how to get around. And I'm going to test the market. And I'm going to do things that are going to be eye-catching. They're going to be something that people are going to start paying attention to and that I know are going to work. And so if you can just swallow your pride and start to do some really incredible things and, you know, get rejected over and over again, you're trying to get to that, you know, for my app right now, my aim is to get 10,000 rejections. If I get 10,000 rejections, I know I need to pivot. That's it. I'm not aiming to get.
I love that, actually.
Yeah. That's it. And like, I need to get better at like accepting those rejections and like understanding why.
Yeah.
If I can really get at those things, I know for a fact, no matter where I go in life, I'm going to learn a ton. So that's my aim. I hope that
is so helpful, Mina. That is too helpful, honestly, because it's such a freaking crazy reframe. Because you know how our brain is always attuned to false positives rather than false negatives. Just kind of saying to yourself that, you know what, I want to get a certain number of rejections. You know, you're not, if you get a success, oh, okay, that's great. But the point is that what I'm looking for is I want people to say no. Because then when they say no, okay, like, why did they say no? What do they have what do they know that I don't know? And how can I take that lesson and use that for my product itself? Like, it rewires your brain in an interesting way.
I had a really great conversation with someone just recently. They said that, you know, they're giving their time away for free and they're doing this really great consulting work and they're really excited about going to market. And what's really interesting is that as soon as they put a price on that consulting, they're going to quickly understand what value they're actually bringing. Because if you're actually pressure testing and seeing whether or not someone will pay for that particular service, you're going to quickly realize that maybe what you're offering for free is not the same value as when you actually put a price tag on it. And so, but the only way to do it is get that no. One of my good friends, Greg Clark, you know, always recommended this as a sales guy, is that get your quick no, move on. Let's get it. Let's move on. So that reframe really helped with my thinking as well.
This is a really good place to end episode 3. Like, thank you, Mina. Like, thank you. Honestly.
Such a pleasure. It's so, like, you know, after working with so many different people, you start to realize, okay, so there's a pattern here, you know. So, happy to share this.
I'm loving this, honestly. Mina's been amazing. For episode 4, we'll be talking about building an advisory board. And I think this is a pretty important one for anyone who's building a startup, and the goal is like, how do you identify the right advisors versus just names? Don't get caught up in the trap of big names. What's the template for getting advisor meetings? What questions should you ask, or how do you vet your potential advisors to make sure that they're going to bring value to your business? Make sure you tune in.